So can you please briefly introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Lily Huo, and I'm a recent graduate from MIT, and I graduated with a double major in biological engineering and political science. And I'm originally from Greenville, North Carolina, and I attended J.H. Rose High School.
Okay. So in high school, what kind of challenges did you face?
I think in high school, everyone's like, these are like really sensitive years in your development. You're going through puberty, you're going through pretty big changes because you have to make a lot of pretty big life making decisions, such as, which college you want to attend, whether you want to attend college, stuff like this. Personally, for me, I think a lot of the challenges were like balancing your life. So on one hand, you want to have a lot of friends in high school because your social life is important. On the other hand, you also want to do a lot of things to boost your resume up as much as possible. So you end up being, sort of spread thin. You're like doing school on one hand, making friends on the other, doing sports or activities. Then you're also doing all these million other extracurriculars. So like a lot of it is like figuring out how to manage all this work and still not feel bogged down. So I think those are like the main challenges that you would face in high school, that I particularly faced in high school. I think other challenges that people in general could face in high school are just like, navigating different relationships with their parents. Around this time, I changed a lot during high school. So obviously that would change how I interacted with not just my peers, but also my family. So you just end up growing up and needing to navigate all these different waters.
Okay. So I know that you mentioned it yourself. You participated in a lot of extracurriculars like the robotic team, city council, other stuff. You also took like many challenging courses like AP courses. Uh, so how did you manage your time and make sure you stayed on track?
If you ask anyone who took any classes with me, I was very particular about my planner. I would make sure, like, I think time management is a skill that you have to learn. It's not something that you learn in one night, but if you want to be able to do as many things as possible, you need to learn how to manage your time. So, obviously, the easiest first step to doing that is just, setting blocks of time for when you're going to do stuff, make sure you know when you have deadlines, make sure you know when you have to go to which meetings. And so all that you can do simply by like having a bullet journal or like a planner. There's like tons of resources online for different types of organization plans. I remember I was obsessed with finding like the perfect one, but you have to remember that like resources online are like they'll work for whoever wrote them, but they won't necessarily work for you. So just make sure you search up time management skills. It sounds really cringe, but like this all is very helpful when you're trying to figure it out. And then just, adjust it to your own needs, right? Everyone does different things, but just make sure like when you have which meetings, when you have which deadlines, write them down and then plan accordingly to that. Obviously, like I think you have to realize that the more things you do is also equivalent to less time you have to do other things, right? So less time to just read books for fun, less time to walk around and just relax. So always like make sure you're not testing your limits too hard. I would say that everyone has a different limit. You can't do well in everything you want to do if you don't make time for yourself to actually relax and regenerate over the night. Everyone has different limits and that's okay. We have to like keep that in check. I would say, you have to understand that, I felt like I would always have to work on 100% efficiency sometimes. Like if I wanted to get everything done and still be sane, I had to be completely on time. I had to set up times when to relax. I think you just need to learn to give yourself a break sometimes. And I think another important skill of time management finally is just like communicating with everyone who needs to know your schedule, especially my teachers. With robotics, I also did mock trial. These two things require a lot of like school trips. And so there was like, I guess, second semester of high school, I was gone on some 3 or 4 day field trip, like almost every other week, right? This takes up a lot of your time. And so there were times when I had to postpone tests. There were times when where I could not like submit my homework in time. But if you let your teachers know ahead of that, that's fine, right? They will communicate with you. They will figure out a schedule for you. So, like ultimately, time management is just about like making sure you know your limits. You know, understanding that you're not going to be perfect at it. be organized, and then communicating with everyone who needs to know about your schedule. And that's mostly it.
Right. So while in college, did you face any cultural, environmental, social challenges?
Yeah, so I think, for me particularly, I went all the way to Boston, and that is a very different environment compared to like a small suburban town like Greenville. And so I guess challenges in the beginning, I flew there by myself actually. So on my first day of college, because my parents were working, I had to take 3 bags of luggage and just flew myself to Boston and moved in by myself. And so at the time, it all seemed pretty daunting because for me, particularly, Boston is a very big city. And it's especially in a campus like MIT, students are very diverse. They come from all over the nation and also from countries other than the US. So you have people coming from different backgrounds, they have different traditions, they have different norms that they're used to. But ultimately, your main goal in college is not just to study, but also like have a good social life, right? Meet new people, make new friends, make connections because your network is very important to you after college. And so I think at the beginning, the main challenge was just like, you know, being dropped into like this bubble, this very new like open field and just being like, okay, I have to go make friends now. And so I think, it's just a lot of adaptation, but ultimately people are people. And so for me, even though I was like pretty nervous about it the first day or like a little bit overwhelmed, like I adjusted pretty quickly. I think it's all a matter of fact of like going with the flow. People are very easy to get along with in college because everyone has the same goals, right? Everyone is new, everyone wants to make friends, so everyone's pretty open. And so you just, I would suggest like putting yourself out there, like going to events, going to orientation events so that you can actually meet people. And so that way you overcome all your social challenges, right? Environmental wise, I think I had less of a problem with that. Boston was a wonderful city. Um, I wouldn't say too much of an environmental challenge other than the fact that the adjustment from high school to college is very big, but I think everyone knows that. And of course, you just have to adapt to, a harder study life, but you should be able to figure that out. And there is a lot of resources in every college for that. And I guess cultural wise, I think it depends on like how diverse of a college you go to. For me, as I said, like there are students from all over the world. And so on the floor that I lived, there was a particularly strong like Muslim community. And so I also ended up becoming like a medlink at my school. So that's like a peer mentor in their own living groups that are also trained to perform first aid and also provide advice to students and give information for resources. And so oftentimes when like girls who are Muslim or part of the Muslim community needed help, you had to like understand certain like cultural barriers, like to not touch them, and also to not ask them to take off their head dressings if they like sometimes had headaches or like got hit on the head, like you have to be careful about that. And you just need to be like aware and knowledge of the situation. And if you ever feel like there's something that you might not understand, just ask people. People in general, or the people that I met at least, are very open to teaching you about their culture and helping you understand. So ultimately, it's just about, being considerate when you have these challenges, being considerate people, and just being open to asking them questions.
Um,
Oh, did I answer the fourth question then?
yeah.
Okay, sorry.
So you kind of went through how you overcame these challenges as well. So as you're currently in the process of switching from college to work, uh, do you feel any stress or negative emotions with this?
Um, I'm not I'm not necessarily switching from work. I'm going into more education,
Oh, okay.
but but it's like a similar process, you have to, I think negative emotions would include, I've made very strong connections with people for 4 years, many of which I've lived with for 4 years of my life. So, I think there's like bittersweet moments in college, and I wouldn't consider these necessarily as negative emotions, but, there's like a sense that you need to be an adult now. Um, there's like a general feeling that once you graduate from college, you need to start being an adult, pay taxes, figure out where you're going to live, buy furniture, stuff like this. These are all very stressful emotions that anybody graduating college would feel. I do have a friends who are going to work, and I think, a lot of the stress came originally from finding work in the first place, but once they do find a work and find a job, that stress sort of goes away and then turns into, okay, well, I just have to move there and stuff like that. And so I think the main times of stress are just the feeling that you need to mature overnight almost because nobody teaches you how to do taxes in college. Nobody teaches you how to find furniture. You have a dorm. And so I think it's just a stress of having to adapt to that difference. And I guess maybe negative emotions are just, leaving behind people who you've been really close with and just moving on and realizing you have to sort of start over again. I think the starting over process in general is what causes these negative emotions.
Right. Um, so the people around you when they had a transition, like from college to work, how do you think they dealt with it? Like, did they have to?
I think, you know, a lot of my friends actually already graduated. Two of my closer friends graduated like 2 years before me. And so I saw them sort of adjust to it. And a lot of it was hmm, just sort of going with the flow, figuring out their place in the world. I think, a lot of my friends were very fortunate to have jobs that paid them well. So financially, they were secure, and that was something that they didn't have to stress about. And so the main things they stressed about were just social type of problems, such as how do I make friends in a workplace? This is much more difficult than making friends in college. But these type of things, they come with time. And like I said, with transitioning to college, you just have to be open to meeting new people and put yourself out there and just be open in general. Other than that, though, I guess in terms of, coming to terms with the feeling of leaving people behind, the friends I've stayed close with have made an effort, to stay connected with people that they were close to in college. And this is pretty important because college is also 4 very long years, and they are also very important to your development as a person. So the people you meet in college will probably be people you know for a long time in your life. So keeping them around you is close. It's all about putting in effort and putting in work. But yeah, I do think most of my friends who went to work were very fortunate to have very like high paying jobs. So financially, they didn't have to worry about the financial stress. I can see how that would be a problem for some people. But I think in terms of that, you just have to be organized and know how to manage it well.
Okay. What kind of advice do you have for young people who are adjusting to a new environment?
Take it easy. Like really just take it easy. Nobody's expecting you to do anything crazy. You shouldn't have any expectations for yourself except for to be comfortable and happy. That is actually really important. I think a lot of people who are stressed when they are transitioning to an environment are people who are, very high maintenance, very like high maintenance isn't the right word. Very they might be hard on themselves or they may be very like motivated or ambitious. And just remember that like these are all good things. But when you're transitioning to a new environment, nobody is forcing you to make it be perfect. You don't have to have a smooth transition. It doesn't need to go, it won't always go your way. It never does. And I think you just have to go with the flow and just make sure, most importantly, that you are happy and comfortable. It's always good to put yourself out there. These are all tips and advices, but everyone should go at their own pace.
Okay. So what are your goals and dreams for the future? And like what feelings have you had about working towards these goals?
Yeah, so for the longest time, my goal has always to become a surgeon, or I guess more generally for a while, it was to become a doctor, work in the healthcare field. Eventually, around my sophomore year in high school, I did a research and internship at the NIH, and lab work. You go there some days, and you have a lot of experiments. You go there next day, you have like no experiments. So during that time, I went to Duke University and shadowed a few professors, professor surgeons specifically. And I got really into cardiothoracic surgery. So that was something that I really become interested in. And since then, I also did more shadowing at Mass General Hospital up in Boston. And so that pretty much solidified, like, I know I want to do surgery at some point. And so those are the goals and dreams for the future. I would say on top of that, I want to do more than just become a surgeon and become a doctor. I did a lot of work in political science, including getting a double major from that in MIT. And so I took a lot of classes at Harvard Public School or Harvard School of Public Policy at TH Chan. And so a lot of classes I took there were related to health policy. And so that's something, that I'm interested in because health policy is a very important issue to the United States. And obviously, as we all know, there's no perfect solution, but that's something that I want to be involved in the future outside of just, seeing patients in clinic. I guess feelings toward working towards their goals. I've just been working towards it. It's been like a nonstop grind since high school. I decided to take a break this year because MIT is very tiring and I decided I wanted a break. So I'm not going directly to medical school, but I will be going to Duke for a master's in global health. And so I hope that will also open another door for me to, take the health education that I've learned here and bring it to places such as third world or developing countries that don't have as much like medical technology or even access to medical health care in general. And that's something that has interested me recently, especially because, I did a lot of biological engineering. So a lot of my research that I've done and a lot of the classes I've taken have focused on medical devices. And so I'm very interested in sort of like how we can provide medical devices at an affordable cost to third world countries. So this master's will hopefully like open a door for me to venture into that side once I have more time and figure out my career.
Okay. So have you ever felt like down, like sad, anxious, and how did you deal with it?
Yeah. In general, I think everyone who knows me would say I'm a pretty cheerful person. I laugh and I smile a lot. But especially with COVID this year, there have been times when, everyone feels down, and there are times when I haven't always succeeded in everything I've done, and that will always be a bummer. And so in general, like I think the most important thing is um, keeping a clear set goal for yourself. Like you have these long-term goals of I want to be this, I want to be that, I want this career. These are all good for, motivating yourself to continue working as hard as you are. But in times when you are feeling mentally down, I think it's mostly important that you maintain a healthy lifestyle. And so MIT students, they are known to be the most hardworking, but also sometimes the most sad students. And while I'm not sure about that stereotype, I do know that a lot of my peers, no matter what major they were in, were stressed a lot. And so oftentimes like things such as going to the gym, working out on a regular basis. This is difficult to do when you feel really down because sometimes you just want to lay in bed and do nothing, right? But like that's okay. Once in a while, that's okay to like take a breather, relax how you want. But I think ultimately you need to realize that maintaining a healthy lifestyle is the best way to cheer yourself up. You can cheer yourself up short term by watching a show, going to sleep, eating good food. These are all important things you should be doing once in a while or even more often, depending on how you feel. But in order to be happy long term, you need to like maintain a good lifestyle, go exercising, eat healthily, don't drink too much caffeine, take care of yourself. I think these things make it easier for you to bounce back whenever you feel down. Yeah. I also like to read a lot. I bought a lot of books in general, so that's my go-to.
All right. Okay. So have you ever have you ever helped your friends cheer up when they're feeling down or stressed?
Yeah, of course. MIT is very difficult, I just said, and I think everyone there's a very strong support system in general, especially I lived on one floor in one building for my entire MIT career. And so everyone that I lived with, a lot of people stay on the same floor all the way from freshman fall. So we all ended up being really close. And so, we all just did small things, everyone's really busy at MIT. So even though we all wanted to go eat dinner at a restaurant sometimes, it was really difficult to make schedules line up. But if someone had a birthday, we would all just, take a 10-minute break the night before or 10 minutes before midnight, get a birthday cake for them, go to their room, sing happy birthday, just relax for 20 minutes, stuff like that. I also was an MIT MedLink, as I mentioned. And so I would say, these we as medlinks, our job was sort of to provide support, physically if you had a bruise or or even for girls if they had menstrual cramps, we had like hot packs, stuff like that. Or if you were an athlete and you sustained a sports injury, we could provide some like band-aids or like sports tape, stuff like that. Um, we are also supposed to support students like emotionally and mentally. And so like one of the more common ways to do that was to lead them to someone who could provide them professional help or like help on their classes. So, we could send them to the student support services if they wanted to talk to someone and also get like an extension for their class. This is very common because everyone needs help and there's nothing wrong with asking for that. But I guess the second most common form would just be talking to them. Sometimes people would just knock on my door and they could come from, they could be people who also lived on my floor or people who lived in the floor above or below me. They just come, we just talk, sometimes, really unexpected things happen. Some students, some of them, a few of them that I talked to, some of them had relatives that like passed away. And so even though they had managed all of the important stuff, like they got an extension, they emailed the professors the situation, they talked to the people who they needed to make sure their schoolwork wouldn't be impacted. Even when you've done all of that, like these things, they impact you more than beyond your school career. So having someone, and like sometimes they might not feel comfortable talking to like a therapist or just talking to someone in student services about the relative, or even they might not feel comfortable with their friends if they want to keep this matters to themselves, but they feel like they need to let it out. So me as a medlink, it was easier to talk to me because I might be someone who doesn't know anything, but I can provide that support, And like there's also, they have the security of knowing that everything I say, everything that is said in my room is confidential. So I'm not gonna go on and tell anyone. That would be very bad. But in a lot of ways, you can just be there for someone, even if you don't say something, just providing an outlet for them to talk to you about how they feel is sometimes very helpful. So in general, as a med, like it was my job to cheer people up in a lot of ways, but it was also something that like I was happy to do at any time, as long as if I didn't have a test the next day. But yeah, other than that, like helping my friends, whenever it was the same thing. If they felt bad, they could always come to my room and talk and say whatever. I would just ask them, what do you need me to be? Do you need me to be a listener? Or do you want me to give you advice? And we go from there, or if I could tell that they didn't feel good, I'd be like, do you want a break? You want to go to the gym? You want to release stress? So I'd be there for them. It's just important to make sure you're not being overbearing. But yeah, I like to help people.
Okay, so what advice do you have for young people to deal with negative emotions?
I think this is pretty similar to how you want to cheer yourself up. Negative emotions, I think sometimes it's really easy to get into a rabbit hole. So, the more you think about something, if it's like not particularly fun to think about or if it hurts you, sometimes it's easier to just keep thinking about it and then it will just spiral, which isn't good. So I think for young people, especially since we're still developing, you guys specifically, I'm no longer, like you guys are going through puberty, things are rough. So you should just be open to talking to people. You can't solve every problem on yourself. You can do your best to be independent, but there is no shame in asking for help. And I think in a lot of ways, whether it's your friend, your parents, your older sibling, younger sibling even, or your teachers, just finding someone to talk to it about it if you feel like you're starting to get overwhelmed, that's very important. Outside of that, making sure that you are maintaining a healthy lifestyle. I just can't stress this enough because you cannot bounce back that easily if you are not eating well, if you're not sleeping well, if you are not taking care of your body. It physically makes it more difficult for you to deal with negative emotions. So, you can have your 24 hours, eat all the ice cream you want, watch all the shows you want, stay in bed all you want. But after that, you need to really try to maintain a healthy lifestyle in general so that when you do feel bad, you can have that 24-hour break, but then you can bounce back a lot easier. Just make sure you talk to people and are being healthy.
Mhm.
And don't be too hard on yourself. As long as if you are trying your best and you know that is good enough. And like that's important to remember. Just try your best.
Okay, last question. So we have started a nonprofit, as you know, and
Mhm.
so the mission is to improve mental health among young people. So what is some advice you could give us to help like try to achieve our mission?
I would say, I think currently when it comes to mental health, um, I personally am not diagnosed with a mental illness, but I know many people who are. And I think a lot of times people in general have this sort of stereotype or this stigmatism that therapy is for people who are mentally unwell or mentally unhealthy or mentally wrong or some negative connotation of that. And I think, this might be more difficult, but reaching out to your local like hospitals, especially like or like therapists who work at your hospitals, things such as that, so that you can bring more awareness. I think people will start to become more sensitive, not sensitive, but more aware and more caring of mental illness if they see that if their own children or their own students um, are focused on this or are concerned about this problem. So I think it's really good that you guys are like working on this at such a young age, because a lot of people don't think about mental health until later on in their life. So I think it's really good that you guys are doing this. I think specifically, resources such as this, they are very helpful, but they only go a certain way, right? Like people can watch my video and I hope whoever is watching this is like doing the best they can in their life, and I hope that they're happy. I want them to be. But like ultimately there's only so much that I can do for them. And so I think it'd be nice if you guys can connect with, you know, the local mental health department at the hospital and see if you can form some type of partnership and some actionable item off of that. Yeah, that's what I would recommend the
Okay.
most.
Well, thank you. I'm gonna
Welcome.
stop the recording here.